It's a task force.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 6, 2024 Grants Pass City Council meeting. We start our meetings with a moment of silence, so please join us for that. Please rise for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have Councilor Fazer and De La Grange on the phone tonight, and I know Dwayne Yunker is going to be joining us. He said he might be a little late. And it looks like Rob is absent at the moment. But let's go ahead and get started with our Destination Marketing Organization presentation. Is Tori here to get us going?
I forgot what year we're in. It's 2024, so ignore the date on that first slide. Hi, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to give you an update on what Visit Grants Pass has been up to this fiscal year, as well as talk about our upcoming year. Just walking through what we're going to talk about, I was just going to do a quick reminder and level set about lodging taxes, how they're collected, where they're going in the city, who we are as an organization, our current fiscal year 2023-2024 update, and then a preview of our business and marketing plan for the upcoming fiscal year. And so just kind of a general reminder, our lodging taxes are collected on a booked hotel room when a visitor checks out. Lodging taxes are collected within the city limits. Our lodging taxes are incremented in a 7, 2, and 3 based on when they were passed. All lodging tax passed before 2003. Government entities were allowed to decide how those tourism dollars are allocated between general fund and restricted funds. So that first 7%, you can see 30% in tourism promotion, and the other 70% helping our general fund, general city programming. The 2% and the 3% were passed after that 2003 date, which required a 70-30 split between tourism promotion and facilities and general fund. So the second 2%, 100% of it stays between those two categories, and then the last 3%, the other 30% goes to public safety funding. Who we are. Visit Grants Pass, or Josephine County Visitors Association. We are an economic development agency with a specific niche and lens on the visitor industry and getting visitors to come, enjoy, spend money in our community, and then return home. We want to stabilize our visitor industry. It has a pretty strong seasonality to it. We want to manage visitor expectations. We want to make sure that while we're inviting visitors here, we are protecting that local livability so that our community remains friendly to the visitors who do come here. And part of that protecting local livability work can be developing the destination and visitor experiences, whether that's enhancing, whether that's supporting projects that the city is doing. For example, like Dollar Mountain, adding those additional mountain biking trail mileage can help redistribute users so that Cathedral Hills, which is well loved and sometimes overcrowded, maybe those users will be redistributed. It'll be a better experience for all. Our board of directors is made up of several attractions and hotel partners in the area. And we also have Councilor Lovelace as our city council liaison, and John West as our county commissioner liaison. So as we move into the first half of our fiscal year, I did want to kind of touch on some overall general stats of economic impact. These are our 2022 numbers as the 2023 Economic Impact Report from Dean Runyon. It's provided by Travel Oregon, is currently being calculated. It's usually released about May every year. In Josephine County, $171.5 million is spent on visitor spending in this community, and the industry employs 2,230 people. And so you can see this data started being collected in 2003. You can see 2009 pre-pandemic, 2020 our COVID year, and 21 and 22 our post-COVID years, which were great years of tourism in this community. As we look at occupancy and how we compare to our neighbors, For quarter one and quarter one would be July to September, which is still part of our peak season, so occupancy is a little higher, while moving into October through December into our shoulder and more off-season, you start to see occupancy drop. We stand pretty close in line with Jackson County, although slightly below their occupancy levels. Douglas County and Klamath County, we are typically slightly above in the occupancy rate over those two counties. Our average daily rate, this is an interesting point in that for quarter one and quarter two, for the last 4+ years, we are historically the lowest ADR between those 4 counties. And ADR, again, stands for average daily rate. So when we look at a tax that's on the total of a hotel bill, when our hotel rate's a little lower, our collections are also going to reflect that. Just to kind of give you a greater idea of how the whole region and kind of state of Oregon is doing, Travel Oregon does provide these monthly statistics, so I just pulled our January 2024, so you can see how the US, the Pacific, the statewide, and the 7 regions of Oregon are doing. Southern Oregon occupancy for January for a total is about 40%, and this does include the counties of Lake, Douglas, Josephine, Jackson, and Klamath counties. You'll note too on the bottom part of the chart, you can see the rolling 12 months. Southern Oregon as a region is down about 6%. And notably, we're also the only region in the state to have a decrease in our average daily rate at -2.56%. So that is contributing to some of the lower collections. And it's a hard discussion to have. You can't have lodging partners in a room discussing rates. It's not legal. It's a form of collusion, but what I do hope is to start really engaging our lodging partners about pride in our destination and showing them this one valuable data point, and they can make their own decisions on pricing based on that. So, moving into what we have been up to. This fiscal year, we've had quite a few accomplishments already, including our new visitor guide. In the packet that I passed out to council today is our printed edition of our first ever annual report, reporting on fiscal year 22 to 23. We published a redesigned 50 Things to Do brochure, which is a favorite brochure of the staff at the Visitor Center, so we want to make sure that they had their most useful tool. We also, in partnership with the Committee for Public Art, published the Public Art Walking Tour. Through a grant funded by Travel Oregon, we had a consultant come in and help make a roadmap for an Oregon Main Street organization and how that can form and different funding and structure scenarios that may be successful in this community. We do have a steering committee of local business owners moving that roadmap forward with the support of myself, economic development staff out of the city, and the chamber. We also have a regular monthly industry e-news about what's happening, and it has an open rate of 61%, so it's a pretty well-engaged newsletter. We added a book direct feature onto our website, and so what this does is it makes an intermediary link between our website and our lodging partners that pulls rates from online, so it looks like they're on the Visit Grants Pass website, but they're seeing hotel rates, and when they go to book, they go directly to our hotel partner. It helps keep the buying chain directly to our hotel partners instead of using an online travel agency like Expedia. They take a 25 to 30% commission, and so it allows more dollars of those bookings to go directly to our hotel partners. We also participated, this was another grant funded by Travel Oregon in partnership with Visit Bend. The Sustainable Tourism program out of the Cascades office has been working on creating a baseline measurement for resident sentiment around the visitor industry. I've heard several times in this community that people don't want to become Bend, and when I hear that phrase, what it means is we don't want all our trailheads full, we don't want to wait hours to eat at our restaurants, and things like that. And although the visitor industry is really important to helping fill and keep those businesses open, we want to make sure that our visitors remain welcomed by our community. So we did get some baseline data. There was visitor intercept surveys done in the community. They did advertising on Nextdoor and on the Daily Courier, and they only accepted surveys if you're a local resident to really get a feel for how tourism was viewed in this community. It was viewed very favorably. It's viewed as an industry that we have opportunity to grow, opportunity to welcome more, and so we were above the state average of positivity there, and so that was exciting to see. And having an organization like ours and partnering with the city and partnering with the chamber, I think that we can continue to grow this industry and grow it in a way that supports and helps our community and hopefully doesn't have a whole bunch of negative impacts like we've seen in the past in neighboring communities. So into our marketing. We have done more of an always-on sort of focus this year. Sometimes the message is learn more, and sometimes the message is book now. Book now more focused on our shoulder and more off-season times. During times of maybe wildfire or times where the news is maybe not as favorable to our destination, it's more of a learn more so people can book farther out away from either poor air quality or just trying to avoid fires. We do a lot of digital ad placement, search engine optimization, social media advertising. We do print advertisements that support content that we have secured through our PR agency so that a magazine would have both a naturally placed story about Grants Pass followed up by an ad to the destination. We advertise in the Medford Airport as our closest regional airport to our destination. On the screen, you can see a couple examples. The ones on the websites are able to be kind of more of a GIF and interactive, and the one screenshot on the bottom right-hand corner is our current spring break campaign that we have going, which has a regional feel of assets, local assets, and based on where someone is in the buying chain from initially seeing it in inspiration to retargeting, they'll see different images and messaging there. Marketing campaigns and our flight dates for 2023, July and August for summer, fall. Fall campaign was very heavy Art Along the Road messaging. Winter campaign, November, all the way through the new year with some holiday messaging in there. And then we currently have our spring break campaign, which is a more high spend, short-term duration, and that we're tracking those retargeting ads in our cell phone program so that we can see who interacted with those ads and who showed up in the destination as a form of attribution. And so once that campaign ends, we follow those ads for about 90 days to see if someone showed up in the destination. More marketing examples. This is in the Travel Oregon Visitor Guide. 300,000 guides are distributed globally. And we are right on the first part of the Southern Oregon section. This is in the Travel Southern Oregon Visitor Guide, which has 75,000 guides distributed. The 101 Things to Do has 412 distribution points and 117 copies distributed, and it's for the Del Norte County, Southern Oregon sort of interest and drive market. We also did an advertisement, Northwest Tour and Travel, in their 52 Getaways content, as we were location number 50 of the 52 Getaways, which was really exciting to secure that placement. That's a result of a PR fam. Adam Sawyer did come and spend a couple days in the destination hosted by us to get to know Grants Pass. Like many of the media I talked to, he said he had been to Grants Pass, and then when we were sitting down on G Street at dinner, he said, "Oh, I actually drove the highway to the Redwoods, and this is Grants Pass, and it's way better than I remember." So I hear a lot of that when I'm meeting with media. I love to get them to recalibrate what they think visiting Grants Pass is. And that's also what ties into our slogan of take a new route, to get off those major highways and really see what's so great about this area. Lastly, this is the one print ad where we don't have placed content, but it was such a last minute ad. We got it for like 1/8 of the full price to have a full page ad in 1859, which has a really strong following in Oregon. And it was a health and wellness issue, so we kind of focused it on rejuvenation in our destination. And we do advertise at the Medford Airport baggage claim. We've been advertising there since I started in 2021, and this is the new ad that went up in September 2023. Public relations. Public relations work is really important because naturally placed content resonates way more than an ad does. So we do quarterly outreach to media. We host familiarization trips, which, like with Adam Sawyer, brought him in, hosted his hotel, paid for his experiences so that he could write, he could sell, and he can get placed media in Northwest Tour and Travel. He writes for many other publications, so his experience can continue to bring articles in the future. We're also working hard on reputation building within Oregon. Grants Pass is a great destination. I'm experiencing that there's a level of people who maybe haven't been here since maybe the 80s who don't know what Grants Pass is today compared to a post-logging era Grants Pass. And so we're really working on how great this community is, the public art, our community events, our outdoor spaces, and of course all of our favorite things to do, like the jet boats, rafting, Oregon caves, those sorts of pieces. So for 22-23, last fiscal year, we had 92 mentions. So far into this fiscal year, we're at 42 mentions, and this is through January of 2024. And when we calculate ad value, basically we're calculating if we were to pay for that content placement, what would it cost us? And so for 22-23, we basically had an additional $279,000 in marketing when you consider the placed content through hosting, through pitching, through fulfilling inquiries by media. And this year we're at about a little over $98,000. Social media. So this is our organic social media year to date, and this is through January. It's 323 posts, over 8 million impressions, and over 321,000 engagements. And our engagements this year over last year has increased 12.6%. Instagram, we're at 858 posts, over 1 million impressions, over 48,000 engagements, and a 0.7% increase in engagement. And these are samples of top 3 stagnant posts as well as our top 3 reels for through January.
Can I just stop you for a minute, just to let people know the difference between an impression and
Sure.
engagement and those sorts of things, because those are things that we're not. And I see we're moving on to clicks.
Yeah.
So I just want to have that a little bit clarified. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I can move through this really fast. Please interrupt questions. Impressions is really a high-level net. It's someone might have scrolled in their feed, and that's considered an impression because the post landed in their feed. And engagement means someone actually clicked, liked, commented, or interacted with the ad. And so the engagement's a stronger reportive metric, but impressions, that's your first line in the funnel. Getting the impression, being in their feed, they might actually scroll past it a couple of times, and then there's that one picture that really grabs them, and then they like something. Then maybe they like their channel. And so it's working through that funnel until they become a follower and hopefully a visitor. So then when you get into paid social media, you look at impressions, you look at number of clicks, because that's what you're paying for, is to get people to your post, to your website, wherever that click is going. CTR is click-through rate, so it's the amount of the rate based on impressions. So we're at a 0.98% click-through rate. When we look at community benchmarks from travel and hospitality, a good click-through rate is 0.9. So we're online with benchmarks in this industry. And CPC stands for cost per click. So every single click, how much we paid for it. And we're at 0.39, while industry standard is 0.63. So we're getting more clicks at a lower cost than many of our partners in this industry. Boost is another form of social campaign where it's a naturally placed organic post, and then you boost it to a particular audience. Same thing with impressions and clicks and cost per click. Boosts naturally have a higher cost per click cost than the more digital form of social media impressions, but so we are slightly above industry standard when it comes to boosting. Our website, I did mention the Book Direct feature. What we are trying for the first time now that we have this tool on our website is our spring break campaign is pushing to a landing page whose #1 call to action on that landing page is to use our booking feature to book their trip, and then having inspirational content, and then again, reminder, book now, and going to our intermediary page before hopefully booking with one of our lodging partners. What's in development for our website is a visitor event calendar. I know there's several event calendars throughout the community. This one will be vetted for very specific events that should have an interest or draw to visitors from outside 50 miles. And then we are working on search refinement and keyword search for our businesses, since we have a list of listings of businesses, so it's easier for the visitors to find what they're looking for. Website traffic, and I know the numbers are a little small. Our top markets on website traffic are Washington and Oregon, Reno, and that plus or minus 25 miles from there, and then Crescent City, Sacramento, San Francisco, San Jose, Redding, and Eureka are all kind of in that same 4th level performance. When you look year over year, our number of engagements for this time is up 29%. Sessions are up 6% at 145,000 sessions. And our top pages for this year are our home page, and then pages that we use in our different forms of digital media, from our Farm to Fork themed blog, Scenic Fall Hikes, our 50 Things to Do. That page, even though it disappeared for a while and came back when we redid the brochure, it very quickly climbed into one of our top 3 pages. Measurements, this is always, so the marketing's pretty, it's great, what does it mean? So we have spent $108,000 in direct digital marketing campaigns throughout the year. Of that, about 33,000, almost 34,000 has been tracked in our Datafied geolocation platform. And so we don't track every single piece of marketing just because it kind of doubles up the cost. So what we track in our Datafied program is the retargeting. So once you have that inspiration and someone interacts, they're then tracked via an internet cookie, and then we retarget them and hit them again with a slightly different and more engaging ad. And that one is tracked. And so if someone interacted with that ad, I can see if they showed up in our destination. So if you use the internet, you're being followed. Sorry to say it, I'm one of the people following you. Assuming an average daily rate of $91, which was averaging all the daily rates for each month from July to December, and an average visitor spend of $100, which, let's face it, if you eat out twice at this point, that's $100 spent pretty quickly. For every dollar we spent in advertising, $358 came back into the community in visitor spend and positive economic impact. So that's what we refer to as return on advertising spend. So we are working really hard to bring people into the community. We can also estimate a little over 9,000 room nights because of the amount of advertising we've been doing and what we've tracked specifically in this campaign. And again, it's not every single dollar we've spent in marketing. We just kind of use this to track to make sure our marketing is landing and seeing who's coming to our destination. So who is coming? Within the destination, our top visitor age group is between 45 and 64, and the second age group of 25 to 44. Our highest visitor income bracket is actually the less than 50,000 income, with second behind that being 75,000 to 99,000. So what that says to me is, as we look at inflation, high gas prices, less expendable money, CARES Act and many other additional free monies that were out and about in our communities have dried up, that audience is going to be the first to retract, shorten their trip, shorten their driving distance, maybe take a trip every other year. So that's going to be our challenge of how do we fill in that income bracket with one of the higher income brackets that's a little more resilient to economic buoyancy that we have going on at the moment. So, but we know who's here, we know who's our second audience, and we can work on retargeting and trying to reach that higher audience. Before I go into our future plan, are there any questions of what I presented so far?
Questions? No questions? We have Dwayne and DJ and Brian are all on the phone, but no hands raised, so I guess we don't have any questions.
All right, so moving into next fiscal year. So working with JC, which thank you as always, JC, you're super responsive and helpful. Our TLT projection for 24-25 is $719,200. As we closed our books for 22-23, we did have some rollover, and our board decided to actually restrict 100,000 of that rollover and move it into 24-25, making our 24-25 budget $824,000, which means we're almost staying level with this year and the year before. And the goal in doing that is that as we continue to market in these destinations, if we pull back and stop marketing in a destination, we have to rebuild that again if our budget goes up. So if we can keep our budget level and keep targeting these same markets to get them in, hopefully the long-term investment is more stable and more people coming in. And so that's what the goal of the board is doing with the restricted funds and moving it from one fiscal year to the other. Now the other cash assets, the $197,000, that includes our 3-month operating reserve, which is a requirement of our contract with the city. And then for those who have been around since we started, we did also, as a board, vote to keep 100,000 in a crisis reserve, because what COVID taught us is we don't always know what's going to happen. with an economic downturn and budget going down, we may need to withdraw some of those funds to help lift our budget and keep it where we are so we can fight some of these societal issues that we don't have a lot of control over, but are real realities when people are making visitor decisions. So marketing. We continue to build the brand of Visit Grants Pass. We do this through our public relations, programming, media interactions, sponsor contents and highlights of our year-round experiences. And we target a year-round marketing campaign, and so based on when we're targeting and who can come, if it's during the school year, we're trying to reach those either couple with no kids or empty nesters who can travel around the school year. The beautiful thing about COVID and distance learning is parents could travel even during the school year, but I know for the sake of the kids, it's better they're in their schools now. This is kind of line by line where our market budgeting is going, from website management, our social media contract, PR, marketing, to our visitor guide, our distribution, the extra materials we print to help the visitor centers provide good services to our visitors, marketing campaigns, social campaigns, print ads, all of those things that we build together as part of marketing. Strategic partnerships is just sort of a fancy word of how do we do continuing education and participate in the memberships of organizations who help advocate or help us get our work done, whether it's the Oregon Destination Association, we're members of the Chamber, we're members of the Illinois Valley Chamber. And so really it's to help us have memberships. We're memberships of DMA West, which is a Western US DMO support. They have an executive conference which provides training and cohort groups for executives in destinations all over the Western US who might be facing some of the things we're facing. And of course the conferences it takes to provide that continuing education. Now, global sales, we are a market that is requiring, that basically hangs all its hat on leisure visitors. We don't necessarily have a conference center. We don't have a sports marketing program like our neighbors to the south. And so when we have leisure as our only hat, we also need to make sure we're filling that with international leisure visitors. Now, outside the borders of the United States, travel agents are alive and well. For example, when you book a trip in the European Union with a travel agent, your trip is guaranteed. So when your flight is canceled, you call your travel agent and then you go get a beer, and while you're drinking your beer, your travel agent calls back and it says, I have all your flights fixed, your hotel's adjusted, your rental car, all your confirmations are in your email, have a great trip. None of that stress falls to you. So that's why in other parts of the world, travel agents are alive and important. And to get into that book of product that a travel agent is using, you have to use what's known as a receptive tour operator. That's a US-based tour operator who signs contracts with their hotels and attractions who have a bookable product, and they put that in their book of business so that the travel agents can find it and book wherever they are in the world. So just last week, I was in Lake Tahoe at the Go West Summit. It's a really great conference focused on Western United States travel with visitors from all international markets, from Mexico to China to the European Union. And basically I'm meeting with both receptive tour operators and some tour operators that do their own sort of product booking and package building to say, here's our destination, here's what we can provide. The really positive thing was a lot of them were like, I'm so excited to see Grants Pass here. I used to come here at the bus. I used to work with this hotel. You know, in COVID, a lot of the sales manager positions turned over. I don't know who to talk to anymore. Can you help me find that contact so we can get you back in our book of business? So I have lots to follow up to do, and I'm so glad because that means that at an international scale, people know where we are and what we have to offer. We also partner with Travel Oregon and Travel Southern Oregon. They host international travel trade, so oftentimes travel trade organizations who are high sellers of Oregon product get to come and experience Oregon on their own, and that just makes them even better sellers because they have such a great time here. We also are working on an education program for our local lodging, guided services, bookable product experiences on how to enter the buying chain, what it looks like, you know, who to work with. I have a list of leads for my conference that anyone in the visitor industry of bookable product can follow up with if they want. They just need to know how to ask, and I need to know who to offer that list to. So it's a pretty low level investment. It's one conference a year. Between registration and travel, it's about $5,000. And lastly, our admin bucket. This is the normal cost of doing business, from office to tech subscriptions, phone, payroll. I have slated right now, possibly trying to bring a rare placement back to help with some of the work in the greater county, bringing in and keeping that voice at the table. If we don't have the projects for a rare placement, that money will be reallocated and most likely back into marketing. And I always have a small contingency line because you never know what's going to come by as a possible investment. I just want to have some flexible spending money as that appears in the fiscal year. So, questions this fiscal year or next?
Thank you, Tori. Nice presentation. Valerie?
Yeah, that was a great presentation, and I truly respect the networking, and what you've done in this community is amazing, and the networking you've been able to bring with your past experience with Travel Oregon and that. You said you were looking, when will you find out about the rare placement? What
So
you
the
have?
applications are due April 1st, so I need to make sure I have some project-driven works. The goal is they get their work done in the 11 months of service that they're here.
Okay, and so that's what you had last year. You had, I know that, I can't remember her name. but
Alice, it was
Alice.
2 years ago. We didn't
Oh, it's
have
2
it
years
right
ago.
this year.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember, but I know that she did a lot of work. I think basically that is the only other, I did have another question, but you know how that goes. It's back in there, so let's see if anybody else has a question, and then I'll come back if it jumps out at me. But thank you for all that you do.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right, think fast, Val. Nobody else had any questions? I guess you can follow up with Tori another time if you think of your question.
Yeah, I can't think
Okay.
of my question, but
Okay.
like I said, I kind of like to make little, and I know where to find you. I see you all the time, so it's, you know, it's not like I can't ask that question. But once again, yeah, I was just trying to, the biggest thing is for me is you talk fast, and
I
so do
know.
I.
I'm
And I
sorry.
understand that, and that's okay. And anybody who's in a particular field runs through those acronyms like there's no tomorrow without realizing, and that's why I slowed you down for that
Thank you.
very reason. Because there's a lot of information here, and there's been a move to the digital world and that sort of thing. And so I think it's really important for people to understand why and how the world has changed from that perspective. And like, once again, I thank you, because I have seen that the networking that you've done with all of the Travel Oregon sites and everything you've done has made a really big difference in bringing in new ideas. And I absolutely love the Visit Grants Pass and the, you know, what's around the corner. So thank you.
Thank you.
Joel has a question.
Oh, Tori, it was a good presentation, so thank you for your time. You obviously put in your effort on this, and I appreciate it. I don't necessarily expect you to answer this, but at some time during the year, a recreation visitor day, where one person spends one day, it generates direct, indirect, and induced benefits to the community economically. And do you know what the total of that is for a recreation visitor day?
You mean like someone who's a day traveler versus like an overnight traveler?
Both. It includes both. It's just the overnight traveler. What is the economic benefit for Grants Pass for that, for one day, and then the next day, and then the next day? What is the average?
I might have to check the Dean Running report and follow back to see if they boil it
Okay.
down to like
No-
a daily
no problem.
value. I mean, if our average stay is 2 nights in a hotel's $90 a night, that's $180 to start,
Sure.
plus their spend. And so it's hard to really pinpoint exactly. And the hardest metric is a day visitor, because I mean, people are coming from Medford, they're coming from Ashland. The tourism promotion money is stipulated, I'm supposed to market to 50 miles plus, or someone who books a hotel room. And it's fair to say that Ashland's like on that tipping point that some people might book a hotel room just for like a fun weekend, but they're not a target market. I'm reaching beyond them. And
Yeah,
so,
I understand, and if you can come up with it, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
And it's not a life or death thing. It's just that's the metric I'm used to looking at these statistics with.
sure.
Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Tori. So when you look at the different restaurants in towns that are busy or businesses that are busy, do you see a certain segment of people from out of town providing that activity?
Yeah, I mean, a successful business, there's kind of like the 80-20 rule where 80% is probably coming from your regulars and 20% from your extra. And so if your regulars are getting you to the black, and your visitors are hopefully that little bit farther. I don't run or work in a restaurant. My hope is that our visitors are hitting our most local restaurants. Those are the restaurants we feature and we market. If people really want to go to McDonald's, they'll find it on Google. But that's not what we're presenting in our media as something to do, you know? So I would say so. From what I hear from my hotel partners whose front desk send people downtown, whether it's to shop, whether it's to eat, whether it's to have a happy hour drink, I think we're all really excited for the Bohemian Rooftop this summer, is that when those visitors come back, they talk about how delightful our downtown is. We have this public art that hits you no matter which corner you're on, great small businesses, friendly staff, and great local restaurants. And that's the feedback I hear back from my hoteliers whose front desk are sending people downtown. And I know that like any community, we have some houseless in our downtown. We are not the only community facing that in the entire US, I can tell you that right now. So it's not, at this point, all the feedback that I'm hearing from my hotelier partners is all positive, even though, like any community, we are working on tackling some social issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for the nice report, Tori, and you're obviously doing a great job with the dynamic marketing plan and program here, and I'm looking forward to reading the annual report.
Awesome, thank you. And there's also 2 quarterly dashboards. Our board sees those for my website and communications coordinator, Griffin. I just thought I'd throw those in so you can see what our board kind of dials in at too.
Thank you. All right, next up, we're going to move into our council action items. Our first item tonight is a second reading on an ordinance that would amend the Grants Pass Municipal Code. And I don't know, is anyone planning to do a presentation? Okay, so creating Chapter 5.58 regarding regulation of humanitarian service events on publicly owned property. So we don't have a presentation tonight. We'll just launch into discussion or motion. Valerie.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and move to adopt the ordinance creating Grants Pass Municipal Code, Chapter 5.58, Regulation of Humanitarian Service Events on Publicly Owned Property, and have it read by the title only, second reading.
Is there a second? Seconded by Joel. Discussion on the motion? Rick?
So one of the items in here is when an item is heard by the hearings officer, does it have the ability to be heard by the city council? And the specific language in here indicates there is no opportunity for an appeal, which of course would mean then it could not come to the city council for an appeal, but also even legally, even if that language is in there, are there avenues an individual could use, like go to circuit court or something? Or is because that phrase is in there, their right is totally gone? I don't know if that can be answered or not.
We don't have Augustus here tonight, so the question is here. The hearing officer's decision is final and may not be appealed.
Yeah.
And I also realize the dynamic in there that the hearings officer makes the final decision. And if it goes to the city council, they are taking away, in essence, in some way respects his authority. Our authority, I believe, exists in the ordinance in itself by the language that's in there. And if the language in there is not something we, I would say, appreciate or is not appropriate at the time, maybe it's outdated or something, we can always change it. It's what I'd like to hear from some other counselors.
Rob.
I think Rick brought up several great points. May not be appealed. How is that defined? We have no lawyer here tonight to tell us. But what concerns me most there, and it says the hearing officer's decision is final. Essentially, we've got a non-elected, actually it's not even a City of Grants Pass employee, not elected, and they are potentially making a really critical ruling with council is essentially, I believe, giving away its responsibility. As Joel has said many times, it's pretty reasonable to give away to cede authority or assign authority, but not to give away responsibility. And anytime a government employee goes to the elected body and says, well, just trust us, you can trust us, we'll take responsibility. Well, they don't have any responsibility unless it's given to them by the council. So I'm very uncomfortable with that line. For the reason Rick brought up is that we have no idea exactly what the definition is of may not be appealed, number one. And number two, to me, I believe the hearings officer's decision should be able to be appealed to the city council. I think it's few and far between that was likely to happen. However, this is a brand new ordinance. We essentially have a moving target. We've never really tried to corral this before. We have a lot of changing aspects that are going to come up in the next few months, we hope, with the Supreme Court ruling. So we really don't know exactly how this is all going to play out. And to say that a hearing officer's decision is final, may not be appealed, I feel for all of these reasons is really inappropriate. So I voted no on this last time, and I would vote no again tonight, and I'm just not sure how anyone else could be comfortable with such language that's at best ambiguous, but I also would disagree with the main premise that a non-elected official would have that amount of power.
Brian is on the phone.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think I basically completely agree with what Rob's saying. I think these situations where this actually comes up are going to be so rare and so few and far between that it's not worth council ceding its authority to have a final say. Thank you.
Further discussion? Val?
Yeah, and it's something I hadn't really thought about, quite frankly, but I will also say that it does say that the city has the burden of establishing the preponderance of evidence. So it kind of, I think that's their way of saying, hey, the city has to really prove that they have gone above and had reliable, relevant evidence in order to, for the hearings officer to find that. I guess I look back when we started the homelessness and we started having appeals, and as a city council person, I did not feel comfortable making that decision and having us be the officers in charge, because it was very difficult. And so at that point, I felt much more comfortable having somebody different, making that decision and not us. But I do understand that appeal process, and that, that is an important piece, that there be something that if they truly thought, they were wrong, that there was a step. So I'm not exactly sure how to put it in there and make that, because I think it would be used to few and far, I would like to think it would be few and far between that it would get to that point. And like I said, with the discomfort I felt as a council when we were put in that position with the homelessness situation, that's, I think, why I tend to feel a little bit reluctance to have it there. But
Rob?
Yeah, I agree with Valerie, with what you're saying with regards to the one hearing that we had on the park exclusion. It was kind of chaotic. It was all over the place. It was contentious. And it was out of our area of expertise, we'll say. But that's not really what this is about. This is about the humanitarian service providers. And to me, I get a sense that with the park exclusion issues, it's a little more black and white. I think by the time the police have gathered the evidence, it's pretty black and white. I think on this particular ordinance, I think it could be a lot more gray in many different aspects. It is people's First Amendment right to help those in the park almost in any way that they see fit. And it's a gray area. And but with that said, if it goes to a hearings officer, and I'm not proposing that the city council be the first line of a hearing. If this goes to a hearings officer first, the hearings officer will have gathered the evidence in an orderly, legal way. And if it ever had to be appealed to council, that could be presented to council in a very succinct and clear package, I would hope. That's what the hearings officer would do. It wouldn't add any burden to our city attorney. It wouldn't add a lot of burden to the council because, again, all the evidence would be presented to us and it will have been packaged by a lawyer. So I'm not as reluctant to necessarily hear an appeal that has already essentially been filtered through an appointed attorney. The other consideration that I have that really concerns me as well is if, let's say, someone's only avenue of appeal would be to go to LUBA, we know that that's a minimum of roughly $18,000. And I mean, I know people in Grants Pass who literally remortgaged her home to take an issue to LUBA, and it got remanded back to the city, and she won her case when it came back here. But that's a lot to expect of anyone who really believes in their cause, to have to remortgage their home as their first line of appeal. And that, to me, is, as a city councilor, as city council, we are essentially should be looking out for the public and not necessarily the expediency of, of a hearing. So I don't like the concept that someone might have to go to LUBA or spend a large money on a lawyer as their first line of appeal. To me, they should be able to, on the rare, we hopefully very rare, if never occasion, that they should be able to bring it to the council. And it's pretty clear to me, and I really appreciate Rick bringing it up.
Joel?
I just had a couple of comments and a question. First off, I appreciate the staff work and working with the MIST and the providers down there as a joint effort. And I think that's a great model as we go to the future, working with our partners, and that this is a partner effort. I want to ask, this is not the only permit that we give to the parks. How do we handle the appeal? We should handle all the appeals the same way. How do we handle the other appeals?
The vacation from the parks are handled through a hearings officer.
Okay, and how about other permits for the parks? This isn't the only permit activity in the parks.
Yes, but that's primarily, when it comes from a legal perspective, something we had to establish, and it's established through a hearings officer.
Okay, so that goes to a hearings officer also, okay.
And yeah, there would be some inconsistency, but that could be based on risk associated with the two subject matters being different, like Councilor Pell was trying to explain. Whether it's a hearings officer and or you modify this language and you include council, where someone can appeal the hearings officer's decision to council, you can definitely make that decision and do so. Ultimately, either way, wherever it stops, the circuit court would have the ultimate say on
Sure,
that, and it could be appealed to the circuit court also.
It just seems a little arbitrary and capricious to have one for one permit and another for another permit. And, but anyway, it's not a big deal.
That's for council to decide. But
Yeah,
if you do look at wanting to make this change, if that's where council wants to go, then this motion would fail. And then you would provide direction.
Sure.
You'd provide direction to have this re-put on a future business meeting with the changes as discussed.
Okay. The other thing I just want to bring up, and it's no surprise to Rob, because we talked about it at length, I think there's some benefit to having a hearings officer hear the case. The council is a political body, and we deal with political issues. And we're not always going to be up here. It's not always going to be us. It's going to be, it changes across the board. The issue here is a legal issue. And so you got a political body dealing with legal issues. And that can be, depending on who's on the council and who they answer to and what they want to do, that can be that can produce an illegal result. and so that concerns me a little bit. That's why the judiciary, that's why you have the separation of powers at the federal government, so that I, as a federal official, I don't also handle the lawsuit against the Forest Service. That's handled by an independent body, not by me. or my boss. And again, it's not, this isn't a major issue. That just, when I look at that, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. And Rob's right, if it could make it more expensive, and I'm okay either way. But I just want to have our eyes open as we move forward that there are legal issues and there are political policy. And council, if they get into legal issues, depending on the makeup of the council, that can enter a self-serving illegal area. And I don't want to see that happen.
I just wanted to clarify, I think with Joel's question on other park permits, is there another situation in which something would have a need for an appeal and that goes to a hearings officer? And another park permit would be like reserving a gazebo or a ball field, right? Are there other park permits?
Oh, definitely. In terms of other types of park permits, yeah, but those are more administrative, and in terms of the shelters, ball fields, things like that. And if, to my knowledge, we really haven't had issues come up with that. If we had, those would, typically come to the director first, and then if there's an issue, then they would go to the council. But again, it's really a matter of, here's the fee. If you pay it, you get your reservation. If you don't, you don't. I mean, it's a little bit more straightforward. There's really not any subjectivity involved.
Okay, thank you. And then I also just want to let you all know that Mark Bartholomew has written to me and said that, first of all, a case like this would not go to LUBA. It's not a land use issue in that sense, but that any appeal of the hearings officer or the council would be considered a matter of an inferior tribunal, and it would be handled by a writ of review, which you would turn in and go to the Josephine County Circuit Court. So that would be the next step of appeal if we don't create this intermediary process. Rob?
Your last sentence actually finished what I was just going to say, that it would seem to me there should be an intermediary process when going to Josephine County Circuit Court directly from a hearings officer. And the council, Joel's right, I mean, the council does a lot of we are the legislative body, but we're also the quasi-judicial. We act in quasi-judicial capacity in many instances. And to me, it would make perfect sense to have us, or the council potentially in those rare instances, be the bridge, and would also be probably relatively low cost, if not free, for someone to appeal to the council first before they had to go through the expense of potentially hiring a lawyer and going to court, which would really be a real large barrier to entry for many people to have to pay that big legal fee. So anyway, thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted clarification because we've kind of gone around, and obviously there's a lot of municipalities who have their own municipal court, which we do not have, so it automatically works through the county and the county system. And so it seems to me that it makes sense to let the system take care of itself. And I would agree with Joel that it could be a real political hot potato. I mean, when you're dealing with stuff, which is exactly what we found out when we were put ourselves in the middle with the exclusion and them coming directly to us, is that we recognized that it was a hot potato and we didn't really want to deal with it. So I really kind of feel that this is kind of the same thing, that if it's going to be appealed and there's going to be a person, whatever, it's going to be something that really I would rather have it go to a hearings person and then go to the district court, because that's how the court was designed. That's how the third party is supposed to be, is a watch on whatever. So I really do feel comfortable with the way that it is. So I'm probably going to vote yes for this particular, either way, it's probably not that big a deal, but I really feel that this is an example of where you have different parts of the government acting and doing their role. And that's the role of the court system.
Rick and then Joel.
I also like the comments that Valerie's made because I feel if we set the rules and so forth, but when it comes right down to it, in some ways, if somebody doesn't agree with the hearings officer, by allowing the opportunity to come to the city council, it does become political football. And I think the process is still out there if somebody is not happy with their decision to go through the courts. Thank you.
Joel?
Well, I'll be voting for it. If it goes down, then I don't think it's that big a leap to have the city council be in review, but I don't think it's the best option in terms of what the city council does and what the hearing officer does and how we handle our power. So I'll be voting for it. If it goes down, then we'll just make the change and make that minor modification and move forward.
Vanessa?
I think anything can be political, so if in the event an appeal did come to council, anything that we talk about is inherently political. So I don't see that. I see that being a moot point. I see an appeal to council being a low barrier second chance for what case law has described as First Amendment protected actions. So we all know court is very expensive. I don't see a lot of harm in allowing an appeal to come to council. I think the same bias that could sit with council could also sit with a hearings officer, unfortunately. So it's just another layer of protection for First Amendment protected actions. And I just ask that we take a vote and move on.
Are we ready to vote? All right, Valerie, you made the motion, which was to adopt the ordinance creating Municipal Code Chapter 5.58 and have it read by title only, second reading. How do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
No.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Joel?
Yes.
Brian?
No.
DJ?
Yep.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-3.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass creating Grants Pass Municipal Code Chapter 5.58 Regulation of Humanitarian Service Events on Publicly Owned Property.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is to consider an ordinance that would repeal Grants Pass Municipal Code 8.04.070 regarding water curtailment procedures and replace it with another ordinance titled 8.04.070 water curtailment procedures.
Thank you, Mayor, and sorry that title was so long for a very short topic. I have a very brief presentation prepared for you. Essentially, what this ordinance will do is repeal all of section 8.04.070 and replace it with an identical section of code with very few modifications that we're going to talk about here in a sec. So in 2002, as a bit of history, the City of Grants Pass adopted its first water management plan. The water management plans are required for the Oregon Water Resources Department to ensure that water rights holders are responsibly developing their water permits and existing rights. In 2014, the city adopted an updated plan because these plans are required to be updated on a regular basis. The 2014 plan, however, did include a new requirement from Oregon Water Resources Department, which was to include a required conservation component. So the 2002 plan contains the same basic framework that is in the plan today. It's a very solid document. It talks about where we are at with the development of our water system, what our plans are to develop, what our growth projections are, and what water rights do we need to develop in the future. The 2014 plan did make a few minor revisions to the plan, including introduction of new types of users. At that time, we added irrigation users as a type, which is an interruptible service. That was a new type of water user. With guidance of the Oregon Water Resources Department, the 2024 plan further refines the curtailment section of the plan by making revisions to the curtailment plan triggers. There were very few changes in the overall plan, but the triggers in the curtailment plan the department felt were not specific enough or clear enough to be able to be enacted on by the city manager. So what you have in your packet is a track changes version, and as you can see from the example on the screen behind me and in your packet, it can be a little bit difficult to read that. So we have also included the fully untracked changes version so that you can actually read what that code looks like. So key changes to the proposed code changes are minor grammatical changes, and then the alert triggers have become much more specific. The plan contains 3 curtailment levels, providing the city manager with a range of options to implement during unforeseen or foreseen watershed.
What is that? Are you trying to say you can't hear?
Wayne, you got mute.
All right, I think
Okay,
we're
I'm going to
good.
jump back in. A foreseen or unforeseen water shortage to reduce the amount of water consumed by the city, potentially extending the existing water supply in the event that we're unable to provide water to the community. And you're going, what's a foreseen versus unforeseen event? As an example, as we work towards constructing a new water treatment plant, there's going to be several key tie-overs where we have to basically open up the key distribution system piping and get into that system. During that time, it may be that we will be coming forward and asking for implementation of the curtailment plan because we are unsure of how long some of those tie-ins may take. And if you do run into an issue, we might be unable to provide adequate amounts of water during some of those. That would be a foreseen event. Unforeseen would be half of the plant breaks and we're only able to produce 50% of our water capacity or some other event. So here's an example of the changes. I'm not going to go through all 3 triggers because the changes are essentially the same. However, in general, when the current water demand exceeds 85% of the current supply capacity, whether limited or not, the current supply capacity is 20, which is 31.5 CFS, resulting in curtailment trigger when the demand approaches 17 MGD. So what that does is gives us the ability that if our demand is over 17 MGD and our capacity is still 20 MGD, we have the ability to start implementing curtailment ahead of a potential water shortage. A non-emergency planned or partial shutdown of critical infrastructure that would result in a supply capacity of less than 105% of the anticipated demand. So what that means is that demand is 105% of our ability. We've shut down half the plant, our capacity is 10, demand is probably sitting somewhere at 10.5 MGD. Alternately, flows in the Rogue River near Agnes are less than 105% of the seasonal fish persistent target flows, as set in our water rights. And then that one gets a little bit trickier because it doesn't apply to all of our water rights. So we actually have a base water right that was adopted substantially free of any criteria, but all of our newer permits have a fish persistent target. And what that is it's to reduce the withdrawals from the Rogue River when the flows get low to preserve the fish. It will never affect our ability to provide water, but it does mean that seasonally we may have to withdraw at a lesser rate. Level 2 and 3 follow very similar patterns. They have the same 3 conditions, only those conditions percentages get a little bit tighter, and so it gives us a little bit more range. All the curtailment measures remain unchanged from the previous versions of the plan, which allows the city manager to implement those measures that will be most effective at reducing water consumption by the desired amount. Those the 3 distinct levels, they're designed to achieve 10, 25, and 50% reduction with an N, not with an IO, in water use. And basically they provide a menu of options to the city manager to be able to implement those to achieve the desired goals. The menus are additive, so as we move from a level 1 to a level 2 curtailment event, we can apply any of the level 1 events in addition to any of the level 2 events. As we get to 3, we can apply anything throughout there to try the 3 ranges to be able to achieve that desired reduction. There is an appeal procedure for residents and businesses who may be hurt by the curtailment action, and the ultimate authority does reside in the plan with the council, who can overturn or modify the currently implemented curtailment measures. So just a couple of sample measures, asking for voluntary reductions. That would be in level 1 as an example, where you're trying to get people to comply just because it's the right thing to do. Extensive media outreach, closing car washes, prohibiting hydrant flushing, moving yard watering to odd and even days to try and reduce the overall output of water, prohibiting water of lawns and landscaping outright, and limits for industrial customers. There's a lot more. This is kind of just a sampling of the items that are in there. So we do tentatively have the call to action date set for tonight. There is no cost for adopting the changes as presented. These just adopt the code as approved by the Oregon Water Resources Division. And with that, I would love to take any questions for you.
Thank you, Jason. Council, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Joel.
So the restrictions, fascinating restriction based on the flow down in Agnes.
Yeah.
And it's because we have threatened and endangered species in the river that we're trying to protect. NOAA is the federal agency that has responsibility on that, and they have the final say on whether our measures are prudent or appropriate. Do we have a requirement to consult with them, or do we just do what we think is best?
We do not. What they have is when our water right permits were extended, they put conditions on them that our rates of withdrawal had to be reduced by, I can show you the math formula when we're offline. It is hairy, but there's a formula that says as the flows at Agnes, measured at Agnes, get to a certain level, we have to start reducing our withdrawals by certain percentages.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie and then Rick.
So basically, this kind of sounds like it's just one of those things as we've gotten more and more of their MS4 permit and everything else, the regulations that have basically come down from the state that we need to follow. Am I correct? That's basically the...
Yeah, this was
Where
in
it's come
place
from?
long before our MS4 permit came into effect. So this is related strictly to really trying to preserve some of the in-stream flows, but also it is required by Oregon Water Resources for cities to adopt a curtailment plan so that, again, if there is any kind of issue with the water supply, we have the built-in authority to start shutting people off in an emergency to preserve as much water as we can.
Okay, and the water resources, who is the water resources?
Oregon Water Resources Department. They're an actual department of the state of Oregon.
Okay,
and
that's
they're
what
the
I
ones
thought.
who regulate all
Okay.
of the water, surface and groundwater for the state of Oregon.
All right, thank you. Yeah, like I said, it comes down to the same thing. As if this is just, but we live in a different world than we used to, and it's not all bad. I mean, we do these things for good reasons, but that's kind of, the process and where we've come. So thank you.
Rick?
So can you go back a couple slides? That one, okay, go. I think that one showing what uses would be shut down.
Oh, yep.
Okay, it says there, closing the car washes. Are the new car washes out there, they're required to recycle their water, is that correct?
I can't answer if they're required to. Most of them do, just because it is far more inexpensive. I will say anecdotally, their recycle rates are much lower than they advertise based on their water usage.
So I didn't know, like, if 80% of that water is recycled, they would be able to continue rather than shut down.
Yeah, I couldn't, at this point, this is just one of those items that's on there that they are typically high water usage. We might target more the ones where you go drop your quarters in and spray the water and there is no control over, or ones that don't recycle. The code is just listed as car washes.
So do we have authority to specify that, or is that coming down from the state?
No, these are our lists. This is a list that we generated in coordination with our consultants. And as we talked about, the authority ultimately resides with council to overturn or modify any of the measures that we put in place as staff. So you have quite a bit of control over this.
So the purpose of my question also is that if the operation is very efficient, and then requiring them to shut down doesn't seem appropriate. And I don't know if we would want to consider language in there, set a, I want to say recycle limit, or no matter who it is, whatever type of operation it is, doesn't have to be a car wash. Even if they do not use much water because they are able to function with what they have, then do we really have to shut them down? Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this issue? No. I'll turn it over to council for discussion. Valerie?
Well, I think in the case of what you were talking about, Rick, I think that's basically what the appeals is for, is if there is a business that feels that they're harshly and that they can't function and how important they are, if they come to the council, they could technically, we could make that decision as to that. So I think that's pretty well covered. You know, just like anything, I think the cost of everything gets crazy because there's more and more regulation. I think that's a fact of life. I think we all understand that we want the fish to survive and, you know, clean water and all these things. So I do understand it. I did hear a harrowing statistic though today in terms of housing, that the cost of housing, more than half of the cost of housing is due to regulation. And that's why we have an affordable housing crunch. And so that's a little bit scary. But in spite of that, I am going to move to approve the ordinance repealing Grants Pass Municipal Code Title 8.04.070, Water Curtailment Procedures, and replacing it in its entirety with the Title 8.04.070, Water Curtailment Procedures, and have it read by title only, first reading. Whew.
Is there a second? Seconded by Rick. Discussion on the motion? Joel?
Jason, I was just wondering, the flow down at Agnes, and I just had it in front of me and I just lost it. So what was the flow that triggered?
I'm not going to be able to pull that from memory, Counselor.
Okay.
I can go look it up for you.
Well,
And
I just
talk
wondered
offline.
how often we have reached that flow in the last 10 years down at
Never.
Agnes.
Ever.
Never?
Not, well, I can't say ever. There was a very, very low period, like before I got hired with the city of Grants Pass.
Yeah.
But since I've lived here, or worked with the city, excuse me, we've never hit that low level.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, Valerie, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I'm just having a little trouble with the inconsistency. On page 24 here, I guess, I'm not sure if I see the difference, but we have 2 levels of appeal built into this ordinance, and the council decided no appeal on the last ordinance. So I just, I don't get it. It's, they can appeal to the city manager. If the city not satisfied with the outcome, they can then appeal to the city council. We got 2 levels of appeal built in here, none on the other. I just had to bring that up. Thank you.
Vanessa?
If there's one thing that you should expect from this council, Councilor Pell, it is not consistency.
Further discussion?
Not to expect consistency from us.
All right, Valerie, you made the motion to approve the ordinance. How do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes?
Brian?
Yes.
DJ? Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass repealing Grants Pass Municipal Code Title 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures and replacing it in its entirety with Title 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures.
Thank you. That was passed unanimously. Joel? You can do it twice in a row, Val.
I make a motion to approve the ordinance repealing Grants Pass Municipal Title Code 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures and replacing it in its entirety with Title 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures and have it read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Vanessa. Any discussion on that? All right. Joel, you made the motion to approve the ordinance. How do you vote?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yeah.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass repealing Grants Pass Municipal Code Title 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures and repealing it in its entirety with Title 8.04.070 Water Curtailment Procedures.
Thank you. Next up, we have an appointment for our Committee on Public Art. We have one opening on this committee and 3 candidates have applied in alphabetical order. They are Colleen Milligan, Albert Pinedo, and Bill Seeds. COPA has recommended Albert Pinedo to fill the vacant seat. They say that he has experience working with a diverse community. He has repeatedly applied and is very interested in serving his community and is committed to the community. So, councilors, if you would please, those of you on the phone, you can either say it or text it to me, and those of you in the room, pass your sheet down here, and I will tally them up. Joel?
I just had a short discussion item. Is that okay?
Sure.
So one of the things I saw with the recommendation, and I'd like to have it before we voted, from the council liaison, there were 2 people that had extensive experience in art, and then the one they recommended didn't. And I wondered, I saw the criteria why they recommended the one individual, but the other individuals also at least met the one of the criteria that they thought about. So I didn't quite understand that.
I unfortunately missed this meeting and I haven't had a chance to review it, but I know in one of their previous recommendations to appointment, it was very similar where it was the one candidate that didn't have art experience. And from that discussion, they were really looking for someone to help organize their thoughts and organize their subcommittees. So more of an executor versus an artist.
Okay, I understand that, and I did vote for one of the people that had art experience in the art museum and was very well qualified also. So that just explains my vote.
So 7 of the councilors have nominated the committee's suggestion for Albert Pinedo, and Joel was recommending Colleen Milligan. And with that, I will take a motion. Valerie?
Yes, I make a motion to appoint Alberto Pinedo to the Committee on Public Art.
Is there a second? Seconded by Vanessa. Any discussion? All right, Val, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
DJ?
Yep.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0. Next up is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the city council on items not related to a council action item on tonight's agenda. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. At the conclusion of public comment, council will have an opportunity to respond. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. And I have a card here from Stephen Nelson. I know a few of you tonight are here to talk about the Urban Renewal Agency, so that will come up after our consent agenda.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Stephen.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I understand the city homelessness problem has a lot of moving parts and has become increasingly difficult to fix. Knowing that the asinine behavior of the Biden administration definitely has made the problem worse due to the border crisis, allowing illegal immigration and illicit drug movement into the United States. I work with a small group locally to help some of the homeless folk with basic needs and also to offer moral and spiritual guidance. One of our helpers was talking to a homeless person one afternoon, and the homeless person volunteered some information, which our helper later sent to me by text message. Regarding that message and the homeless person, please listen, and this is only part of that message. He brought a girl who overdosed to emergency. He said she was his 125th overdose he helped. Seems to me the homeless person, though woefully lacking resources and support, is trying to help, maybe even doing more than some of our city officials. And maybe I will be too harsh in saying this, but the city recently sold the public property along the property along the river. And what did you do with that money? I have no idea. And then city officials were distracted by the Flying Lark Casino, which did not open, and I am thankful for that. We all knew back then that the homelessness and drug addiction problem would only get worse, even if the casino did open. We need to open our eyes in this direction and put our hands to work. If you truly care and want to direct money in a right direction, then I believe that should be for an effective drug treatment and rehabilitation center. Also, as I have said before, there should be a city law which states that after three emergency responses, a drug-addicted person should be required to go into lockdown treatment. Sometimes extreme measures need to be taken. Drug addicts do not have the right to infringe upon the shift time of emergency responders. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak during public comment tonight?
Madam Mayor and City Councilors, I'm here representing today the Josephine Community Library System as well as Road Community College. We've been evaluating or looking at the Urban Renewal District Task Force, and I realize this, but I am not sure if I'm going to get an opportunity to speak during that hearing. Will I get an opportunity? Okay, then I can carry on this conversation during the hearing. Thanks, guys.
Did anybody else want to speak during open public comment?
Catherine, Hamilton County. I had the opportunity yesterday to speak to a homeless woman who's living in a tent, who has a puppy, has a 6-8-week-old puppy, pit bull puppy. She was very concerned for the puppy's health because 2 puppies had just died the night before in the park. She said puppies are dying in the park. A whole lot of puppies are dying in the park. So I listened to her, and she was hoping to get help for her puppy, and that's wonderful, and this is great. What does a homeless person do with a dead puppy? I didn't ask, I didn't want to ask, I didn't ask what park. You want us to take our kids there. I don't want my son to see a dead puppy. I don't want my son to see needles, poop, anything else. I just thought it was a really rotten thing to have to consider. These folks want to have pets. Everybody, I think, should have pets. What do you do with them? It just really broke my heart. It's a puppy. Please, folks, find somewhere to put these people. Whatever happens in April or June or whenever the Supreme Court's come back with an answer, these people aren't going to just mystically, magically disappear. They need somewhere to go. Something's got to be done. It's not fair in any aspect. Please try to figure something out.
My name is Helen Cruz. Former homeless person. About 2 years ago, I got off the streets, but I am still very active in the homeless community. I've been out there day in and day out. I'm one of those people that take the food out there sometimes. I do the feeds underneath the bridge. There's a few things that have really come to my attention and brought a lot of concern to me. I don't know if the council's aware, but I don't know if it's standard procedure for officers to be giving bus tickets out of town to people. And if that's the case, where's the money coming from? Is it coming from their pockets or is it coming from the city? You know, they say they have no money, there's no money to put, an urban campground, no funding for, housing. So where's this money coming from? I mean, is that okay? Is it okay to give somebody a bus ticket?
So during public comment, we don't answer questions. It's just your opportunity to give comment.
Okay, well, I just figured it should be out there and let it be known. And honestly, I would like to know where the money's coming from. And if they can afford to give bus tickets out, then why can't they afford to at least build a house and give people someplace safe and warm to stay? Thank you.
Is anybody else wanting to give comment tonight? Not right now? Okay, we'll close public comment. And council, did anybody have any response? Valerie?
I'll always respond. First of all, I will say a few things. Questions were asked about the current sale of property. No, this doesn't go back to River Road Reserve, which I'm assuming you were kind of talking about the sale of that property. That property, the sale of that property, because it was originally bought as a park, we saved it for the parks, and that was kind of our reason behind it, is the fact that that's kind of how government is supposed to function, that if you've used money for parks for that, then basically it should go back into that. And I will say that much of what have you seen over the last several years with the upgrading of pickleball courts and those sorts of things, I know over 700,000 of it went into maintenance and to bring up our parks back up into, so that we could do some of that maintenance. I do, from my time here, I have seen that happen. So that is kind of where the money went, was from parks to parks. I think one of the things myself, because I was a part of that transaction, that was really important to me, is that we didn't spend it in such a way to just watch it go away without having something to show for it, because I think people in our community deserve parks. And that was something I will continue to be an advocate for, because I do believe quality of life is really important. I will also say that now, anytime we have property that we sell, we have designated for affordable housing, because we realize housing is a true crisis. So anytime we do, we actually have an affordable housing account we keep it for, so that when we have people who are coming forward to us to ask for SDC relief or whatever, we have a fund to go to, and then we have used it to get, I think we used it for the Harbeck, for the new apartments, the 55 units that were going up across from South. They came to us because they needed more money to get it going. And that's where we went. We dipped into that fund to say, yes, we know we need this housing. So that's what it's there for. And like I said, in government, you have to, when you commit to something, that's what it's supposed to be used for. We don't just take it and shove it over to something else. So just so that you know that information, that is just out there. And I think it also goes back a little bit. I don't personally think that and I may be wrong, I'll ask Warren about bus tickets. I will tell you, I had a brother who was homeless, and he was living, and we followed his car, and he ended up in Washington. And it's, we knew where his car died, and so we knew where he was at, and we for years contacted the police department and told them that his family was looking for him. They found him, and they contacted us, and we paid for the bus ticket to have him come back to his family. So they did give him a bus ticket, but they didn't pay for it. We paid for it. And it's my understanding that's kind of like, in the past, they try to find places for people, home for people to get help if that's what they need. In this case, it worked out. But I don't think that's something that we regularly do. And I'll just once again hit Warren with that one.
Yeah, Counselor, I think that's a great point. We certainly do not regularly hand out bus tickets, but what we do is we care and we're compassionate about people, and if we have the ability to work with a family and can get an individual back to a specific location, knowing very well that they have somebody on the other end, we will work with that individual. And it's also no different if we deal with, let's say, a domestic violence incident where we need to house somebody for the night. We can't come back and ask the chief for permission to put up somebody in a hotel for the evening. Our officers will make quality decisions on what they need to do at that particular moment. So does it happen occasionally and rarely? It may do so, but that would be the two examples I would give.
Thank you. And just also in terms of working on a place for the homeless, we do have some nonprofits that are working really hard right now to get some things going for. So they're out there, and basically that is kind of the nonprofits, the money that we get from the state, we certainly will use, but we don't have a lot of free money floating around there. So we are kind of counting on several nonprofits that do get money from the state to help the homeless.
I just wanted to add to Catherine, I think you're absolutely right that we do need a place for homeless people to go after this lawsuit is over, or even tonight. There's really no reason to wait, but for sure, after we get a decision later this summer, people are not going to magically disappear. They are still going to be here in our community. I've been mayor for just over 3 years now, and the council has failed to create a shelter or urban campground where people can go, and this is a top concern of our community, is having people in the parks. They complain to me about it absolutely every single day. It's now a matter of national attention thanks to the Supreme Court lawsuit. So I don't think it's just the job of the nonprofits. It's most definitely our job to do something about this. It's very, very frustrating that we're not taking more aggressive action on providing a safe place for people to be and cleaning up our parks. And so I really wish you would all think about that and take action on it sooner than later. How about, I think consent calendar is up next. Emails, how about emails?
There were no emails.
Okay. Consent agenda. These are items of such routine nature without controversy. They may be approved in a single action. And Council President, would you please read the consent agenda?
Item A, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a sole source agreement for water treatment plant chemicals, Kimra PAX-XL19. Item B, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application and upon award accept the Department of Homeland Security's assistance to firefighters grant funds to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus and 6 rapid intervention team packs. Item C, motion acknowledging the receipt of the monthly investment report for January of 2024. Item D, motion special use permit on track Inc. findings of fact. Item E, motion approving the minutes of the City Council meeting of February 21st, 2024. Item F, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Bikeways and Walkways Committee meeting of December 12th, 2023. Item G, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Collaborative Economic Development Committee meeting of January 25th, 2024. Item H, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Housing Advisory Committee meeting of January 19th, 2024. Items I and J, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Urban Area Planning Commission meeting of January 24th, 2024 and January 8th of 2024. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Valerie? We don't discuss the consent agenda, so Vanessa, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian? DJ?
Yes.
Dwayne?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. How about a motion to adjourn the city council meeting and convene the Urban Renewal Agency meeting?
I make a motion to end the city council meeting and reconvene as the Urban Area Renewal Committee. Whatever.
Seconded by Rick. All in favor of adjourning into the Urban Renewal Agency meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have adjourned the city council meeting and now are magically reappearing as your Urban Renewal Agency meeting, because every meeting needs a little magic. We have just one item on the agenda tonight for the Urban Renewal Agency task, regarding the Urban Renewal Agency Task Force, and it looks like Brad has a presentation for us.
Good evening. Yes, with just a few slides to kind of introduce you to the topic, one that you talked about last month. So the subject tonight is a resolution by the Urban Renewal Agency Board to form a task force of the agency, which in essence would be an advisory body to help you as the Urban Renewal Agency Board proceed with some of your strategic planning for the agency. The relationship to the goals would be to encourage economic opportunities. In terms of background, February 12th, you held a workshop and gave direction to create a task force that was, again, in the overall framework. At that workshop, we talked about a number of things, but one of them was what is an opportunity that the agency could use to kind of help be a little bit more proactive and get a little bit more accomplished, shall we say, or work done. And one of those ideas was to use a task force so that could help to focus and maybe expedite some of the work of the agency. These were some of the purposes that were talked about at that February 12th workshop: review the status of current and proposed projects, develop a 5-year implementation strategy, and then consider priority projects, available funds, opportunities for leveraging funds, community assets, and their catalytic investment opportunities, some of which we talked about on the 12th. Potential action items in the strategy. I won't necessarily read all these. It was in the packet for you, but a couple of the large ones there, I think, obviously there's nothing off the table. You as the agency board can kind of set the parameters for this task force. And each of these could potentially create a whole nother ripple effect, if you will, or series of work. But overall, I think the implementation strategy, these were some of the key ideas that we talked about. What would it look like? You have created multiple task forces and committees over the years. The URA has not had a task force of its own. But this is kind of structured on some similar groups that the City Council has had in the past. Again, this is entirely up to you tonight and how you want to proceed, but the recommendation to you would be to, first bullet there, have a business or residence must be located within the URA boundary. And then the expected term appointment, 6 to 8 months. We talked about last meeting about this being a kind of a limited task force. rather than, an ongoing long-term standing committee. In terms of representation on the task force, a few ideas for you: having a commercial lender, a commercial or industrial developer, 3 property owners or business owners representing different geographic locations within the URA. So that would, again, those were selected kind of looking at our URA boundaries and different ways to give representation. And so there's 3 geographic areas there. That would be 3 people, and then 2 URA board members. There was a public comment, and it sounds like we actually have tonight maybe some follow-up to this, I think just this week or maybe last week. Request to include a member from the affected taxing districts. We didn't talk about that at your 12th workshop, but that would certainly be something that is open for you to talk about. As you know, there's I believe 8 different taxing districts that are affected by the Urban Renewal Agency, and several of those, they all have varying degrees of impact in terms of the level of assessed value that is being withheld. And I think on the dais tonight is a sheet that kind of shows that breakdown for you in terms of each agency affected by the URA. Those are listed here: City of Grants Pass, Josephine County, Rogue Community College, Josephine Community Library District, Josephine Community 4-H Extension Service, and then the school districts, both Grants Pass School District 7 as well as 3 Rivers, that's not listed there, and Southern Oregon Education Service District are shown there, but of course those are reimbursed full amount for the tax that's withheld. Excuse me. A couple other things for you to talk about tonight would be that task force size. Right now there's 7 that are in the list in front of you, but again, if you chose to add the taxing districts, that would obviously potentially expand the size of the group. Gauging just the level of interest overall and continuing to pursue this, and then selecting your own representation if you choose to go that route, which of you would like to serve on that group. As far as cost implication, the URA, we would have staff resources that would be impacted by this to serve the task force, do all the standard stuff in terms of agendas and minutes and things like that. And we did put in there a potential cost for a URA consultant. We have had conversations with Elaine, and she, as you know, she has been our URA consultant since the beginning. She or one of her staff have, expressed an openness to that. We could also put out, some kind of scope of work as a draft that people could bid on. That's not uncommon for these kinds of task forces, since a lot of times they do involve a subject matter expert is helpful to have at them. But again, that cost could potentially be covered by the URA if you decided to go that route. We do have the ability to staff it internally. We could do that as well, but there probably are some benefits to having a state URA expert involved. Call to action we have there tonight. It's obviously up to your discretion. You could approve the resolution creating the task force, make amendments, or do not proceed, and there's a potential motion for you.
Thanks, Brad. Council, do you have any questions? Vanessa, then Val.
Do you see moving forward with the task force preventing the council from additionally moving forward with some of the direction that we gave in February, like participating in the STC buy-down program or lot assembling? Do you see those types of actions being put on hold with a task force creation, in your opinion?
I'm sorry, did you say put on hold?
Yeah, or a reallocation of, maybe things that were previously priorities that aren't anymore. Would it be a recommendation to keep all of that action on hold while the task force moves forward, or could those be done simultaneously?
Well, I think technically they could, proceed simultaneous. I mean, you did request that we suspend the grants until we had that discussion on the 12th, but there was some direction given there. So, in terms of the private sector grants that could be available, especially given that we have a line item in the URA budget for grants, it seems like, that could proceed. In terms of some of the other, larger actions, those seem to be the driving force behind the creation of this task force, is to help, bring in multiple and diverse perspectives to help kind of feed into, where exactly do you want to proceed with some of the larger investments. But I think in terms of the grant side, which would be the main activity that we've had to date, it seems like we could proceed. Right now, I believe we only have $25,000 left in the fiscal year 24. So if that's used up, there would not be any funding for grants until you adopt the FY25 budget.
Thank you.
Valerie, then Brian?
Yeah, I have a question. I know that indeed this is what we asked you to do, is to put together a task force, and I actually personally feel that this is a good move to get out into the community to get a better idea of, because this is a huge thing, and with hopefully wonderful consequences. My question to you was, when you made who made the decision on who was going to be on that task force, number one, and did you look at other communities that have URAs? Because I know there are lots of them, because I looked it up. If you ever go on the state of Oregon, how many renewal districts are. How do other organizations choose who to put on there? Did you take a look or ask any of them? Curiosity.
We did. We looked at 4 other cities in Oregon. Off the top of my head, I know that Bend and Salem were 2 of those 4. I think there was a couple of smaller ones as well. And Dana, our economic development manager, did call them and kind of talk to them about their experience with their task force. Some of them are a little bit more formal and long-term advisory committees, that the agencies have established. And I think all 4 of those situations, their URAs have been in place longer than ours. So, there's something to be said for that as well. But you're right. There's definitely it's not unusual for their URAs to have some kind of standing, group, whether that be more of a short-term tenure or longer-term, to help provide guidance on these kinds of things. But again, it's not they're not acting in any way, shape, or form as the agency. I mean, it's strictly for the purpose of helping to do the work to talk about the projects. Yeah.
And to further answer that, in my knowledge of the task force associated with the urban renewal agencies, there's one consistency. The membership resides or owns property within or has an influence inside the urban renewal agency borders. Other than that, some of them have URA board members on there, some of them don't. Some of them have one or more taxing district representation that's on there, some don't. There is usually consistency among all of them that there is the larger portion or the bulk of the membership comes from businesses or property owners that reside within, that have ownership or interest in there. So, but then the rest is all over the board.
Brian, then Joel.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking at the copy of the resolution in the packet, and under number 3, it says the formation of a community task force will help identify priority projects. And I'm just curious if that specific wording means identify priority projects within the scope of the list that currently exists, or if that would be kind of more opened up to any kind of project that the task force thought would be worthwhile.
Yeah, Councilor, I think our intent, at least at the staff level in drafting it, was that you would work within the projects that are in the adopted URA plan. I think that that was the intent there. You know, I think, what is 17 or 19 projects that are already adopted. And as you know, many of those are very, very broad in terms of how they're defined. So it does leave a lot of latitude up. And but I think that was the intent of the wording in the resolution.
Okay, thank you. I have one other quick question. So with regards to bringing on, I mean, not bringing on, we already have Elaine Howard as our urban renewal consultant. And she's worked with us since the agency was formed. What pieces of this task force could Elaine not do? Because she's been working with urban renewal agencies for years and has lots of experience. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the task force would add that we could not simply get by working with our URA consultant.
Well, I think, at least from my perspective, the main thing would be local relevance. You know, on the ground, you know, experience on the ground, economic trends here in Josephine County and Grants Pass. You know, Elaine is from here originally, but she hasn't lived here for many, many years. So I think, you know, there's that. And then, of course, just the perspective of a business owner or, you know, a manufacturer, which kind of brings a different perspective to how the funds could be leveraged. You know, I think that's a perspective that she wouldn't necessarily be able to bring. She certainly is an expert in the ORS and being able to help guide us through the regulations, as well as, you know, creative ways that URA funding can be used. But I think that, you know, she would, if she were here, I think she would admit that there's, you know, she's unable to speak to on the ground today reality in Grants Pass.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I have a follow-up question. I guess what safeguards would the Urban Renewal Board have for, you know, this task force? You know, I could see a potential for members of the task force advocating for, you know, if they are business owners or property owners, advocating for projects that may directly or indirectly benefit them. So how is the board kind of handling that piece of it?
Yeah, well, you know, this would not be that different than some of our other boards or committees, you know, where you have real estate agents on the planning commission, for example, or, I mean, you're right, there is always that potential. At this point, what's before you tonight has not put in any kind of guardrails like that. So I think that would probably be something you want to discuss.
Thank you.
Joel?
Brad, so I was wondering, on the different areas, you use geographic disbursement, and I think it was north of A Street to the river, south of the river. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those are geographic areas. The other thing I thought about were economic areas. And so you got the kind of A to J, which is the downtown area and associated area. And then you got the river that is like from J to the other side of the river. That is an economic attraction, or whatever you want to call it, for investment. And then you got the area beyond that, south of the river. You know, you can cut a pie a lot different ways, and you still get the whole pie, and it's not a big deal. But I was just wondering why you chose the geographic areas rather than the economic areas.
We're certainly open to it, but I think the main driver for this was really infrastructure related. You know, infrastructure, I think, is 2 or 3 of the adopted URA projects, whether that's transportation, sewer, water, which tend to, you know, tend to have impacts more at that geographic level. And so looking at, Spalding Industrial Park, for example, and the needs there, and having some kind of representation from there. But, that conversation could happen either way. I mean, you really didn't need it. I think there are some nuances, I think, that do happen within the neighborhood setting that could really contribute to the quality of the conversation, though.
Then I had a second question. Okay, thank you. So, being an economist before, you look at money brought in, right? And you talked about shared projects, but also after you establish different industries like tourism, they bring in so many dollars per recreation visitor day. And fishing brings in so many dollars per recreation visitor day. And the urban renewal area, in terms of the economic development for the city of Grants Pass, typically industry, I'll just use the example because I'm familiar with it because my kids are involved with it, the microchip industry. Of course, they use a lot of water and we probably wouldn't be a good site, but they bring in a tremendous amount of money to Portland. And you look at Microsoft, you look at Nike, for example, industry. They bring in, and that has a ripple effect on housing, it has a ripple effect on infrastructure, it has a ripple effect on social projects because you have that economic base. And so when I looked at the makeup of the membership, I didn't see, it was like one commercial developer or one industrial developer. And I'm not sure that's in the interest of the future of our community. Well, I think we could do better than that. Ask for discussion. Thank you. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Any questions for Brad?
Thank you.
All right.
You're right.
All right, we do have somebody who's wanting to do public discussion and public comment on this, so please step forward, state your name, let us know whether or not you live in the city.
My name is Pat Fahey, and I do not live in the city. So, as I said earlier, I represent both Josephine Community Library System as well as Road Community College. And what you got to remember about the economic development, that's all funded by money that would have gone to those 9 taxing entities if it didn't go to urban renewal. So I think not to have a voice on what happens there is probably ill-advised. There is Oregon statute that talks about it, and it says when a project is done by urban renewal, and this is 459.0889, this says the taxing districts, 3 of the 4 largest impacted taxing districts have to approve on projects. I don't know if that's been brought up. So it seems to me like it would be prudent to have either individual taxing districts included or brought in as a group. And I'm pretty sure, and I know I represent a couple of them, we'd be fine with just having a voice as representing all the districts. Because there's 8 of them, and I think if it's 3 of the 4 largest impacted taxing districts, if you discount the school boards, the schools, District 7 and 3 Rivers, probably RCC is one of them. One of those that you need to have concurrence on it. And that's what it says in ORS. So I could be wrong, but I've had advice from pretty smart people tell me that's what needs to be done. That's what the ORS says. Whether we've done it in the past, I have no clue. I'm not an expert on urban renewals, but I do know that to be equitable, there should be a voice. Doesn't have to be a big voice, but it has to be a voice. One of the frustrating things about the way this proceeded is that, like I said, there's 9 taxing districts. None of them were informed of the meeting tonight. It should be, if there's something involving the urban renewal that we're paying for, basically, the taxing district is paying for. There should be some sort of at least a acknowledgement of the transaction or what's being discussed, and that hasn't happened. And my request, if you don't do anything else, please let us know so we can have a voice in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else wanting to speak?
Hello, good evening. My name is Cameron Duvall. I do live in the city. I kind of just want to introduce myself. I'm a disabled veteran. I represent a lot of veterans in Southern Oregon. When it comes to the urban development boundaries and some of the different laws that have been passed recently, I just wanted to say we talk about a lot of low income and affordable housing. One of the other goals of that law would be to encourage 30% is supposed to be for low income, but the other 70% is also to open up areas for development, like the gentleman was talking about, for our future. So to establish some kind of plans for alternative financing, other than waiting for a state grant, a county grant, whatever it may be, or excuse me, increasing taxes, whatever you may want to pursue. There are other forms of government that, and specifically the VA home loan, to be able to open up these areas for more dense population building and to build, for example, 4 units. My veterans can build up to 4 units with no money down, with good interest rates, which will provide housing, which will provide base income for them. I just want to say thank you guys for acknowledging that the public has a concern about housing, but not just to solely focus on low income, to also focus on our future and establishing something for my generation and the generations to come to be able to be self-sufficient, not just rely on the good graces of government or the good graces of a program to stabilize us. I think it's great that we are considering opening up more land for use and for more development, and I hope that we continue to do that so that we have something to look forward to and less to complain about, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Was anyone else wanting to speak tonight on this issue? All right, we'll close public comment and turn it over to council for discussion. And I think Brian had something, and then Val. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we could try to really get into the weeds on this tonight and hash it out, but honestly, I don't think I have several concerns with how this is proceeding, and I think I might be more comfortable if we ultimately end up tabling it and having another workshop discussion about it, given some of the information we've received. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Valerie.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to that because I think that the information that has come in front of us is very important, and I think that I really like the idea of the task force and having it and having the opportunity to see what other task force. It was interesting that you brought up the fact, and I actually did go back and read it just because of curiosity, and I did feel after reading it that we hadn't done a very good outreach to other organizations that are affected by this, and so I think that is something, I'm in favor of doing it, but I really would like to spend some time rehashing the makeup of it, and part of it is, this goes back to what Joel was saying as well. I mean, this is economic development, so not only a district, but in terms of looking at, I look at like RCC, you're right, they're training the future, so they're always looking into what's coming down, and so what's coming up in industry and how to promote it. So to me, that just makes total sense to have that be a place. I also see the difference between, I look at south of Northwest A Street and north of the Rogue River. That's a huge area. That's our whole downtown area. That's also Spalding, and I can see some very different, in terms of industrial. I can just see some different layers that I would like to hash out the makeup of that particular task force. So if that's the case, it may be a good thing to bring back to a workshop and have the discussion as to how to make up this task force and what what we want it to be and how we want them to function. So I would agree that that may be the best thing that we do, is to table this and bring it to a workshop.
Rob?
Yeah, I'd agree for all the reasons Valerie just stated. And, you know, the from A to the river is just a really, really huge swath, and for economic and also lots of other reasons. I just also wanted to respond back to, I guess, one of Brian's questions earlier about, you know, what Elaine could bring and what she couldn't bring. And I'm just looking at, you know, kind of the mission statement here, you know, with regards to public-private partnerships. I mean, I'm really interested in the private sector and having them let us know what they think is available, because we essentially as counselors are the public side and we're talking to ourselves. You know, it's an echo chamber. So, you know, that's something that Elaine can't help us with. As far as, you know, feasibility and cost-benefit analysis of large projects, again, we have to hear from people that are actually willing to put, you know, skin in the game and work with the city. And again, Elaine can't help us with that either. So there's a lot to be gained by bringing in, you know, the private sector and people who, there's going to be nobody that's more committed to a successful private sector project or profit-making project than the person who's likely to make the profit. So, you know, I have no problem. You know, Brian was concerned with you know, some safeguards. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, for the most part, we're still looking for success here, and financial success is one way to measure it. And somebody's going to make some profit. It's not all going to go to the public sector, but those are all things that go beyond Elaine's skill set and experience also. So that to me, it's obvious that we've got to bring people who are private sector people who are willing to think big. Maybe they've done things in other parts of the state. Maybe they have friends who have done things in other parts of the state. And frankly, you know, I want to hear their ideas, you know, for sure. So I also would like to table it so we can work out some of the details in a workshop.
Would somebody like to?
Yeah. I'm just going to add to what Rob said and said, I mean, when Brian was talking about, you know, people coming into it, you know, and who is going to change, I just think to myself, how many people since 2016 when this all started, how many counselors have suddenly been on the URA and then been off again and on again and off again. So it's, you know, we're not even stable. I mean, you know, the URA board is currently switching around. So I think this is a good way to have some outsiders put in. But I will make a motion to table this and put on a workshop to have a further discussion of the board makeup for the makeup of the task force.
Thank you. Is there a second? Vanessa, any discussion on that? All right, Val, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
DJ?
Yeah.
Dwayne? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Aaron?
Yeah, before we close out, I just want to make a comment that we are aware of ORS 457 and the guiding laws associated with urban renewal agencies. And if we do major or minor modifications to urban renewal agency in the situations where we need to provide notification to all the taxing districts, we have done so.
Thank you. Okay, we will bring this back up at a workshop at a future date. And we now need a motion to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting and move back into the City Council meeting. Valerie.
I make a motion to leave the URA agency meeting and go back into a City Council meeting.
Thank you. Seconded by Rick. All in favor of moving back into the City Council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Welcome back to the City Council meeting, where we now have matters from Mayor and Council. And I did mention earlier after our public comment, the need for the council to keep on discussing what we're going to do about shelter, and I do want you all to think about that because it is and has been a problem for years now and will continue to be a problem regardless of what the Supreme Court decides. So let's keep that on the agenda and think about how we're going to put together a plan for further action on that. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious, just following up on your comment just now. You know, we've been thinking about it for 3+ years, so I don't know exactly what you expect to come of us thinking about it more. So do you have any more pointed comment for us, potentially?
Yeah, I think the city council needs to get serious about a plan for how we're going to do this. And it's been largely off the agenda for about a year now, since we spent those DAS funds last year. And so I think we need to, you know, on the subject of task force, you know, maybe create a task force for how we're going to handle this, because I do think it's a responsibility of the city government to help make sure that we have a place for people to go that's not our city parks. So, you know, whether we need to put together a plan and ask for state money or how we're going to go about that, just, you know, every Monday workshop, counselors ask for things to be on the agenda, and this one never seems to come up. So that would be my suggestion. And now we have do you have anything else?
I do.
Brian?
No, thank you.
Okay, on the same topic, so is yours on the same topic?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Valerie, then Vanessa, then Rob.
Okay, I would just like to say that there is action happening in our community that currently we have. As a matter of fact, I'd like to dispel some rumors that are out there, like right now racing around on Facebook or neighborhood or whatever in social media, that we've opened up a migrant center in the north end of town and that we are having migrants bust in to town, because that is far from the truth. We just got an email from Sean Pritchard from UCAN, and currently, yes, UCAN has a building. I don't know if they've bought it or not, but they're trying to move to a different location, and that is a location at this point in time that they're working on moving to. And the purpose of that is to help the unhoused, because that is what their role is. Currently, the way that the money comes is not necessary to cities. Cities are given grants to do something. Ashland in tonight's paper is just returning their grant back to the state because it's not working for them. And so we were given $1 million, which is just a fraction of what everybody else has gotten. And we chose what to do with what we felt was the correct way to use that. We did put in, Mayor, yourself, and myself, we did put in for more money from the state legislature, and we were denied. So I'm going to ask you, have you followed back up with the Mayor's Association and contacted the governor and done anything on your side to try to say we're still in the game and we really still want one? I would like to see that. I haven't seen any evidence of that, but that's the only way we'll get money. We do not have the dispensable income as a city. It was never our role to house people. That's never been the role of the city. It has become the role of the city because we've lost control of our parks, but it has never been the role of the city. The state is who funds it. UCAN did get a $2 million grant because I can never remember what they're called, our community care organization, I think that's what they're called. So that means any mental health funding or anything else comes through the county. Joel is on a committee that is a committee of city and county people that deals with health and mental health. And he can tell you who's gotten funding, and it's all come from the state to those organizations. It does not go to the city because that has never been our role. So to say that it is the role of the city, I think you're totally mistaken. That is not the role of the city. Are we compassionate? When we're given money, do we want to make sure it goes someplace so that it helps? Yes. Have we tried to work with the organization that is a grassroots organization trying to get forward? Yes, we have, and we will continue to work forward. And I'm so thankful for PATH and everything that they're trying to do. But that's where it needs to come through. It needs to come through a grassroots because that's not the role of the city. It used to be the role of the churches, but it's changed, separating churches and state. So now all of a sudden everybody expects the state. Well, the state people think is the city, but that's not. It is actually supposed to come from the state, and yes, it's a matter of us going up there, contacting it. I've talked to several mayors, and that's what they're doing. They're up there working with the mayor's organization and the state government to try to get that funding down here, and we have just not been successful with that. So when we're successful with that, I am more than happy to get it to where it needs to go. But I disagree that it is the role of the city to do that when we can barely keep our public safety functioning.
Vanessa.
I think it's important for us to remember that with such large crises that are systemic failures, we can't ask nonprofits to solely shoulder the burden. Same with the housing crisis. We couldn't possibly ask the housing authorities to shoulder the burden by themselves. It takes community partnership, and it takes the leveraging of funds and the leveraging of minds and ideas to lift ourselves out of these situations. So we certainly can't rely on the nonprofits alone to get it done. We all know that we're lacking an emergency shelter in this community. Although the warming shelters are popping up, we still do not have a 24/7, 365 emergency shelter, and that's where the void currently lays. I wanted to bring to the attention of the council that Senate Bill 1530 has been signed by the president and the speaker. It's simply awaiting the governor's signature, and that will bring an additional $65 million for the administration of emergency shelters, project turnkey sites, operations and services of such programs. So I think that it is very timely for the mayor to ask for us to start brainstorming and working with our nonprofit and our stakeholders so that when and if those funds make it to our community, that we can have something ready for it.
Rob.
Valerie, I'd just like you to clarify one thing. When you're talking about the rumors that have been going around with regards to the city receiving money for receiving bust-in aliens and so forth, what you said was nothing. Okay, I'm sorry, migrants. I'm sorry. Nothing could be further from no. You said nothing could be further from the truth or something. But can we say that that's completely false? Is that a better way to say it?
Well, what I read on was the busloads, that there are busloads of migrants being brought into Grants Pass. And I think that what happens on social media is somebody sees something and then it becomes totally exaggerated. The next person hears it and then it exaggerates a little bit more. And so when suddenly you're seeing something that says that there are migrant buses dropping people off at the north end of Grants Pass, I think that's a gross exaggeration. Now, could there be some migrants that go and end up there? Sure. I mean, I don't know, and whatever. I'm not going to go and start standing up there, making them show me their green card or what have you. But I just think that it's sometimes what happens on social media gets exaggerated, and I've seen it. I mean, anytime I opened up, it's just like the first thing that jumps out at me today. So I would just like to dispel the rumors that is what the purpose of it is. And we did hear from Sean Pritchard, who runs UCAN, and he specifically said that is not happening. We are trying to move our UCAN up to that corner of Morgan and what have you. All we've done is open it as an emergency shelter, and we're going to hopefully use it as a navigation center for the north end of town. But he didn't say anything about migrants, and there could be some, but I think that it's been my experience that things get out of hand real fast if they're not clarified. And I did get the clarification from Sean Pritchard, who runs UCAN, that was not its purpose.
One of the rumors that we were emailed, councils were emailed, is that we, the city, were accepting money to have migrants shipped here. And I would have to say that's completely false.
That is, and that's why I said the money went to UCAN. They are doing something with it, but it did not come from the city. And that's why I was bringing up the point that the money is being dispersed to our community nonprofits to start doing these things. And that's what we need to do, is leverage ourselves and work with them to make something successful. And that is what I think we should continue to do.
I'm going to jump in here and clarify, because I think this conversation's gotten a little confused here, but regarding the rumor of UCAN, I am both a UCAN board member and the mayor of Grants Pass, and UCAN is planning on moving their office to the corner of Washington and Morgan. They are currently operating an emergency winter warming shelter there. They have had to close their food pantry that was next door to their office on Southeast 8th Street, and so moving their facility would allow them to have a food pantry that would open once a week. It would move their office up there. To the extent that their office essentially is a navigation center, it would continue to be a navigation center. They are not planning on having an ongoing daily shelter at that site, just the winter warming center. And there has been a crazy rumor floating on Facebook this week regarding money being accepted to process illegal immigrants, which is absolutely untrue. UCAN did receive $2 million last year. 800,000 of that is going to help with the tiny home village in Cave Junction, and 1.2 million is for rapid rehousing of people throughout the county. It has nothing to do with migrants or immigrants or anything of the sort. So that's that for that rumor, but Rick is next.
I was reading the minutes for the Urban Tree Advisory Committee of January 8th, and it says, recommendation, the Urban Tree Advisory Committee make a motion to the City Council for staff to apply for a grant. Is there any action on that? On page 91, it's at the very bottom. It said apparently the grant cycle opens in March. Now I don't know what the window is for that. In that procedure, does it actually have to come to City Council, or can it go straight to staff since it's a grant?
Likely the dollar figure of that grant, I'm guessing, is probably within the spending authority of the procurement laws that we have established, and would probably not require that action.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other items from council that anyone wanted to bring up? No? Okay, items from staff? No? What's left? Valerie?
Are we to the end?
We are.
Can I make
to
a
the
motion?
end.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Seconded by Vanessa. All in favor of adjourning this evening? Joel's offering popcorn. All right, another time, Joel, but let's vote on adjourning. All in favor of adjourning tonight, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.